How did I apply for my German dual citizenship through Descent? That's what this video is going to be all about. When I was going through this process myself and I was starting to research to see, okay, what were other people's experiences like, there wasn't anything. This is a new law that came into place in August 2021. So you can imagine not many people have really taken the plunge to actually do this. Maybe more so now they're starting to, but when I was starting in 2022, there was not much information about that. So I'm here to really share my experience of how I did it, what the process was like, the documents that I personally needed, and where I'm at now. In another video, I'm going to be sharing more crucial tips to make this like the easiest experience possible for you. Not that it's going to be easy, but ways to stay organized and how to stay on top of things. I'll share with you my crucial steps in an upcoming video. And with that being said, hi, my name is Courtney. This is my new YouTube channel, my second YouTube channel, where I am sharing with you everything about moving abroad, learning new languages, getting my German dual citizenship through Ancestry, and also just a place for me to share lifestyle content. So make sure to go ahead and subscribe for this fun journey. So get ready. So the first step for me was finding out that I was even eligible. Like I mentioned in my last video, I had learned about this as an option through a move abroad program that I was a part of. In this program, we were on a call with a visa expert and I was asking all sorts of questions like, oh, can I move here? Can I move here? What can I do? Because I really wanted to move somewhere where I could bring my dog, my big dog, and stay for a long period of time. I didn't want to have to move after 3 months or move after a year or 2 years. I wanted to stay somewhere relatively permanently. And this is where he suggested, like, hey, do you have any ancestry linked to Europe? And I was like, oh yeah, my grandmother was born in Germany. And somebody else on the call had said, oh, we applied for German dual citizenship through Descent, my father and I, and now we have our passports. So this led me into a spiral. I was like, oh my God, wait, what? This is an option? So we ended up talking and they were the ones who really pointed me in the right direction. If it weren't for them, I don't think I would have ever have done this. So I'm hoping to be that person for you, to encourage you, if you're eligible, to take the plunge and do this. The first thing they sent me was the eligibility document. So I'll link that in the description box below, and I have it right here. I wanted to find out if I was even eligible for this. So what I ended up discovering was there are several, this is a new law, like I said, that came into place in August of 2021. Essentially what happened was there was a time period of sexist laws against women where if they married a foreigner, they automatically lost their German citizenship. If they like moved somewhere, they automatically lost citizenship. Like it was just very much against the woman, and therefore their children did not receive rightful citizenship when they should have. So little did I know that was actually the case for my father, which just blows my mind that him and his siblings like never cared. I would be like, give me the citizenship. But I was eligible because my grandmother had moved to the United States when she was very young, like 2 years old. Her father naturalized and they never did. A long time later, my great aunt ended up naturalizing, but according to her, my grandmother and her mother never did. So that was something that pointed us in the right direction. My grandmother also married an American man, which would have automatically taken away her German citizenship as well, if she had have still had it. We don't really know. So my grandmother should have still been a German citizen at that time, and it should have been my father who attained German citizenship, and therefore myself. So the thing is with this, I posted about this because I was really excited in a German Facebook group that I joined to share, like when I submitted my documents, I was like, yay! I got a lot of people being kind of angry because they had lost their citizenships or for whatever reason, but that was because they ended up naturalizing and then or their parents naturalized. My grandmother never naturalized, and that was like a key thing here. That's mainly why I'm eligible, but I encourage you to take a look at this information. I'll link it in the description box so you can read it. And also all of the descendants are eligible. So I know for some countries, you can go very far back in your lineage, but for Germany, it's not that far. Like some people were asking in that Facebook group, my grandmother never naturalized, but she was born in like 1905. And I don't think it goes back that far, but who knows? Take a look and see for yourself. So on the website, it tells you some of the documents you may need, and I didn't have any of them. I didn't have any documents. I'm kind of estranged from the family member who would have all those documents, so I was like, not going that route. I'm gonna have to do this on myself and contact Germany for all this information, but I didn't want to have to go through that process just relying on the couple little documents it listed on the website. So I contacted the German consulate of New York, and my God, they were the most helpful people. I harassed them like every day. Hi, my name is Courtney. I have this question, I have all this. This is my situation, blah, blah, blah. They were always so helpful. So I recommend to every single person who says, I don't know about this, what do? I say, email your consulate. They are so helpful. At least the one in New York City was so helpful for me. I listed out my entire situation. I said, this is my grandmother's situation. She had my dad and then she got divorced and remarried. My dad got divorced and remarried. Like, what do you need? And they listed out, based off of my situation, all of the documents that I would need, everything I'd have to do. And so this was really helpful because it was 10 times longer than the list that was on the website. And they said, we just don't want to leave any stone unturned, so make sure you get all of this stuff. So that was amazing. I created a spreadsheet for myself and I buckled down and tried to get all of these documents. So like I said, I didn't have any of these documents. My dad also wasn't the most helpful because he never lived in Germany. He doesn't know what town his mom was born in and things like that. So I really relied on Ancestry.com. I found a lot of information. I found out the cities that my great-grandfather was born in, which I needed his birth certificate as well, not just my grandmother, her father. So I had to get that information as well. And I found all of that mainly on Ancestry.com. So pay for that for a couple months, get the big package, and just buckle down and do that research because it will help you. It really pointed me in the right direction. So from there, when I would figure out the town that they were born in, if I needed a birth certificate, I would type in that town plus Standesmat. That's probably so wrong. Standesmat. Basically the town hall. The city hall. You Google the town plus that word and it will bring you to a website. This website, you can Google translate it and figure out where the birth certificates are or anything like that. And then you can email them. You can find the email address. Say, hi, my name is Courtney. I am doing this German citizenship through descent process. I'm in need of this birth certificate. His name is this. Can you please help me? And I got a lot of responses that were like, oh, you can't do it this way, but here's how you can do it. And they would send a link for me to request that information. So just email people. It helps so much more than just trying to do something and then hitting a wall. I also really tried my best to, add some German words in there. Like I would say hello in German. I would say, ich bin Courtney. I would say goodbye in German. Like I just tried to be as respectful as possible while the rest of the email was in English. And 9 times out of 10, they would reply in German. It was a lot, but you can do it. Another thing that I found really hard to navigate was like, you want to kind of do this process fast, but it does take time, especially when you're emailing people, especially in Europe, being in the United States and then them being in a different time zone. The work hours are very different. We're never really awake during each other's work hours. And then a lot of times you'd have to wait over the weekend or it'd be a holiday or something. So that part was a little bit frustrating because you just want to get it done. So in my next video, I'm sharing with you all of my tips to stay really organized with your emails and your spreadsheets in order to make sure you know what you're doing at all times because things will get so lost. You'll forget who you're communicating with at every turn and what they say. So make sure to stick around for that video. So I was able to receive my great-grandfather's birth certificate super easily. He was born in Bad Kreuznach in Germany. So I just found that town hall. They were so lovely, the kindest people ever. He was obviously born over 100 years ago. So that birth certificate was so much more easy to receive because it was in their archives. My grandmother's was a lot more difficult to receive. She was born in Karlsruhe. However, I submitted a request. I paid for it and everything through Karlsruhe trying to get this birth certificate and I didn't hear back. So I was emailing them all the time trying to figure out what's going on. Apparently, you have to know the exact district and there are 5 districts in Karlsruhe to get this information. So I didn't want to keep paying and just, guessing at who I was paying. So somehow I got really lucky and I ended up finding the right district. But that was one of the more stressful things about going through this process and having to do it, with German and not the language barrier and everything. I didn't know where to look and I didn't want to feel stupid continuing to ask all these questions, but you got to do what you got to do. Another thing that I came across that was quite a hassle, and there's probably workarounds with this, was I needed to do bank transfers to get these birth certificates from Germany. Now, in reality, it was like $12 and like $17 for the 2 birth certificates that I needed, but my bank fee was $75 per transaction, and I know my bank thought I was absolutely nuts for doing this. They're like, isn't there another way? I'm like, no. I think there's an app called Wise that does bank transfers. I would look into doing that if you're in my case to try to save some money. I didn't know about it at the time. You can do wire transfers that way. It would have saved me so much more money, but I was desperate at the time. So just keep that in mind. You will need to do some bank transfers, and the fees are astronomical. So check out Wise. I'll leave a link in the description as well. Another thing that I needed was my FBI RAP report. So you'll need to go and get fingerprints done. You'll need to then submit those fingerprints to get your background check, and you'll get a piece of paper that says nothing really, or you'll get a piece of paper that I guess will have your criminal record on it, and you're just going to submit that with your application as well. That part was actually really easy, honestly. There's tons of fingerprint facilities around. You can go to the police station, I'm sure, and just get your fingerprints done there. It's super easy, and you have to do it. That's a huge part. Another thing that I wrote down on this list was there were also a lot of different bank checks that I had to get throughout the process because I didn't have any of these documents, remember, and I wanted to order new ones. You can take your original document to the consulate and they'll make a certified copy there. You can't make copies yourself. You can't get them notarized, at least in New York. You can't get them notarized unless it's at the consulate. So it's just very strict. So I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to order the original documents and see how that goes. And every time I had to do that, when it wasn't a part of New York State, I had to send a letter to the town clerks with a certified bank check for them to research and whatever. And a couple times I was just throwing darts at the wall. Like I had no idea who I was supposed to go to. Like I had to get my parents' marriage certificate and they could not find the right town. Like they got married in a certain town, but there's a million different town clerks in that area. So I don't know. It was just really complicated, but I lost a couple bank checks in that process. As you start to get these things in the mail, you have to celebrate because you put in so much hard work that nobody's going to understand the stress that this is. And every time you get a document, you got to do a little dance. You got to celebrate because it's just like, yes, I'm one step closer to completing this freaking application. So a lot of the information that I had to go off of was my parents' own memories. And like I said, they're not really paying attention to this information as, you know, they're living their lives. I don't know, like I had to ask them so many questions. I had to ask every single address they ever lived at. The actual application that you have to file, along with all of your documents, needs to be in German. That's another thing. Though your answers obviously are mostly in English because you're just typing in like the road names or names of places and dates, so it's not anything that you need to translate. But the document is in German. On their website, they have an English version for you to write everything out on, but then you have to redo it in the German application, and that's the one that you're going to submit. So I didn't have to have my documents in German, but the actual application has to be in German. Now, on this application, depending on who's applying, there are different pages you have to fill out. So if my dad was the one filling all of this information out, it would be a lot different, but because I'm his descendant, I have more information to provide. I had to get information on where both of my parents lived throughout their lives. I had to get addresses of all of my grandmother and grandfather's places of birth, when they lived, when they died. I had to know my great-grandparents' addresses, which obviously was just a guess because how do you know? But we knew some of the addresses based off of like the birth certificates that we were able to translate. So it's a lot, and it's really important to just stay super, super, super organized with this process. And that's what my whole next video is going to be, because I mastered being organized. My dad would tell me every single time I sent him a picture, like, I don't know how you're so organized. I don't know where you got that from. I originally submitted my application in June, and they told me that they were going to be sending that off to Germany while they waited for me to get my other papers, because I had my fingerprints done and they expire after a certain amount of time. So that's what they were planning. But I only found out that in December, when I sent in the final documents, that they had just then submitted the whole thing. So that's a little disappointing. I don't know if I'll have to redo my fingerprints or what, but the point is, they told me that I will probably hear back in summertime saying that Germany's looked at my application and I'll get a reference number. And then it's going to take about 6 months for them to approve it. So it takes about a year to a year and a half after you submit it. So I would say to estimate about 2 years for this entire process. So get going on it. It is a really interesting process. I've actually really enjoyed it. I love telling people that I'm getting my citizenship. A lot of people say, well, what's the benefit of having it? When you have a passport that is from the EU, the European Union, you can live anywhere in the European Union. You can get any job in the European Union. Like, it's so much easier to just pick up and move. I've always wanted to move abroad, so this was just like a big hell yes, I'm gonna do this, because I can live anywhere. I can live in Germany, I can live in France, I can live in Scandinavia, but it opens up the world. And I think the German passport is one of the most powerful passports you can have now, and I think the United States passport has gone down so much in strength. So I don't know, I just feel really excited, and it gives me this sense of freedom that I can pick up and I can leave and I can go anywhere easily and I can get a job really easily without having to get visas and this and that and residency permits and whatever. Like, it just opens up the whole world. I understand that it might not be necessary for a lot of people who don't want to move abroad ever, but your kids might. The reason that I'm really passionate about this is because I feel like doing it for my family is the most important thing. I'm very spiritual, and I've done different DNA things that made me realize that my family, specifically this line, has been in this region of Europe for like ever, for thousands of years or however long. I was able to learn about the different tribes that they were a part of, and it was just really cool. And to know that my family had to leave because of World War II, and that subsequently left my dad and myself as the only ones who didn't have their German citizenship. It felt really, ceremonial to do this as a way to give that back to him, mostly for him and for my grandma, and now for me. So it's so much more than just moving abroad. It's very symbolic, and it feels really good. It feels like I'm giving something back to my ancestors because of this horrible thing that happened in world history, that now I'm able to give it back. So I hope this inspires you, if you are eligible for German dual citizenship through descent or another country, to really give it a shot and do it. So let me know if you have any questions. Stay tuned for my next video, where I'm going to give you all of my crucial tips and advice on staying organized and on top of everything throughout this process. And of course, subscribe for more lifestyle content, me learning different languages, moving abroad, and of course, getting my citizenship. So I will see you very soon with my next video.